going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe
and Amy
Review, and this is our twice-weekly show where we review the Magic stories. And today we are here for another Phyrexia All Will Be One side story. It is in fact the third of 5 side stories. Hard as Anger, Bright as Joy by Langley Hyde. My quick review for this story is, I thought that... My quick review for this story is that if you like body horror, you'll like this story. If you don't like body horror, stay away from this story. That's my quick review.
Yeah, I was mostly grossed out the whole time.
And I was laughing the whole way through.
Pretty much the whole thing. I wouldn't say I like the story. That's it.
Okay. We'll get into the full review itself, but if that interests you in going to check out the story, either of our quick reviews, the top link in the description down below will take you to the story so that you can go read it for yourselves. We encourage you to do so. And then either way, whether you've already read it, whether you're not going to read it, or whether you're going to go read it, we would then love it if you would come back here and join us as we continue the discussion, because we want, very desperately, we always do, we want you to leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you agree with the points that we're about to make? Do you disagree? Are there things that we didn't talk about that you want us to have talked about, or that you think are pertinent points that we did not bring up? We would love to hear from you. Let us know in the comments down below. Keep the conversation going. And so, before we get on to the full review itself, hi, welcome to the channel. Thank you so much for being here. Please don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell so that you will get notifications whenever any of our videos come out, or if you're on this channel, whenever we go live, which is every Monday and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern. On Mondays, we play MTG Arena, and on Fridays, we play whatever video game we happen to be playing at the time. And we will be taking, this Friday, we will be playing through, we will be finishing our playthrough, that's what that word was there, of Shadow of the Colossus. So I highly encourage you to stay tuned for that. It should be interesting to say the least, and explosive at most. So we would love to have you. That is, again, Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern, right here on this channel. But yeah, that is that. And then as a reminder, we have other channels, links down in the description box below, and that likes and shares go a very long way. Yes. And thank you for any and all support that you are willing to give. But on to the full review itself. This story is about Luca. I guess spoiler warning, but we're going to be talking about this story, so this is the story about how we find out how and why Luca was completed.
Yep.
I don't know. The first thing I wrote here was, because this story is from Luca's perspective, they tend to yada yada a lot of stuff. Because it's like, how does Luca know this? Why does Luca know this? I think the meeting that all of these planeswalkers had together on Dominaria during Brothers War is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Because it's like, hey, remember when they were all together? They all know each other. They all know all these things about one another. If you ever question it, well, they were together for a long time, and Jace has been going around gathering people, so they all know all these things. Don't worry about it. So,
and you're like, wait a minute, what?
Right. And so, that, like I said, it's just yada yada, right? Don't worry about it. They know each other. Move on with your life. God bless you. God bless you.
Thank you. Can I have a tissue?
Of course you can.
Thanks.
Conveniently, we have them right off camera over here.
It's almost like Amy thought she might sneeze. I really didn't, but...
No. But they're there just in case. Stupid bodily functions. Anyway.
Stupid body horror in this story.
We'll get there. It's on the list. But yeah, like, it talks about, like, for example, he remembers the oath enough to be able to, like, state it in his head.
Even though he's not in the Gatewatch.
But again, like I said, right, because of that meeting, he heard people say it, I suppose. So again, it's doing a lot of heavy lifting of, don't worry about it, we just want to remind you of all these things. And even though it's Luca, and he wouldn't give a damn or remember any of it. He does because we need him to.
Right.
Okay.
Convenience.
He knows...
Over and over and over again.
He knows it's the Hunter's Maze, despite the fact, or because they mentioned it, is how he put it. Because, or despite the fact that when Malira, in the last story, was with the other planeswalkers that he had met with on Dominaria, she had to explain what all the layers were.
Yeah.
But he knows this is the Hunter's Maze because they mentioned it.
Right. Definitely. Definitely.
Now, later on in this story, it says... Where is it? That Luca met Glissa briefly. Now, at that point in the story, he had basically already been turned into a Phyrexian. So, I said that it may be because he's a Phyrexian now, but because they explain away so many things that don't make sense by just saying, well, don't worry about it, it just is, or it has happened before, they've met before, don't worry about it, right? He knows that about them, don't worry about it. You don't get the full impact of whether he actually does know Glissa or whether the creature that he is bonded with has met Glissa before.
Right.
There's no way of knowing that because the story just is like, he knows the oath,
right.
He knows it's the hunting maze before he bonds with the creature and starts getting that Phyrexian taint, yes, you're welcome, inside of him.
Yeah, I get that.
I know. But after the fact, now when he's like, oh, that's Glissa, I've met her before. Have you? Has the creature?
Right.
Are you trying to get us to realize that you are acting as if you are the creature now? Because I don't think that way, because there are so many things that you shouldn't know that you just know even before you've bonded with this thing,
well,
just to make it seem like, oh, it makes sense for Luca to have a story all about himself, even though the only other time that you would have heard from him in his perspective is like once or twice on Strixhaven, and then the whole book from Ikoria that was introduced in a different medium, which means most of the people that are reading this didn't read it. Sorry, you were trying to say something.
No, yeah. As we were reading it, oh, he's met Glissa. And you were like, has he? And I was like, well, maybe he's just, because he's a Phyrexian now, he knows all these people.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's like weirdly, mindly connected to them.
He's part of the hive mind, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I don't think it necessarily has to do with the creature that he bonded with, aside from the fact that it made him Phyrexian. Like, I'm not saying, oh, this creature knows Glissa. I think, because it's not like the creature knows her name is Glissa, right? It's an animal. So, like, it may or may not know that. But I think it just, because he's a Phyrexian now, he knows these things, but they don't, like, again, because it's from his perspective, they don't sit there and, like, give him enough curiosity to, like, ask himself those questions. Like, oh, did I meet Glissa? Should I be saying that?
And because...
How do I know her? I don't remember how I know her. She's just familiar to me.
No, he very quickly loses all of that, and it's I wrote it at some point here. Oh, here it is. A lot of this story, because it's told from Luca's perspective, becomes very fuzzy.
Right.
And I guess this is a good thing. It becomes hard to tell if it's bad characterization and bad confusing storytelling, or if he's just not getting all the things that are happening around him, and so neither are we.
Right.
And it's like, does that make it good? I don't think so. Right? Like, it makes it a compelling story because you get the kind of rationale of a person who is being taken over by Phyrexia. Mm-hmm. And what that looks like for someone that should be a rational individual, but who is losing themselves to to Phyrexia or the Phyrexian influence or completion or any of the different words or terms that you want to use for it.
Yeah.
But it's not concrete enough. Correct. It's because it's from Luca's perspective. And it bothers me because I said that the Nahiri stuff, in the first main story, where Nahiri was being, had been injured and was getting a little, bump on the back of her neck and all that other stuff, I wanted to hear it from her perspective, not from Kaito's, because Kaito didn't see anything.
Right.
So we don't get to know anything that happened there at all.
Yeah.
It's all innuendo and speculation based on what Kaito saw. So all of this stuff that's happening with Luca in this story, and all the stuff that's happening with Nissa in this story around Luca, we don't get to know any of that again. And it's super frustrating. It's just make it clearer. Because, again, Luca not understanding, because the story is only being told from Luca's perspective, is fine as long as, jump it back and forth.
Yeah.
Because there were parts in this story where I felt like, because you were obviously talking about characterization for Nissa, characterization for Luca, characterization for the Wanderer, and a lot of times I felt like the characterization for Nissa was okay, is he not understanding what's happening here, and his memories or his senses are being messed with, and so Nissa's just going along with him now because he's forcing her to, or is she actually saying these things to him? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is she a prisoner of himself and this Phyrexian Hulk, Centaur Hulk thing? Or is she really saying these things and going along with him on these things? Because, there's no way to know that.
Yeah, it's very hard to tell.
And,
yeah.
And, I'm sure that side stories 4 and 5, because they make us wait 2 days before we get to read those, and again, while most people in a vacuum hearing that of you just have to wait 2 days, they'd be like, oh, okay, that's not that big of a deal.
No.
But when you're releasing 10 stories in 5 days, waiting 2 days to find out what happens next, when you have 2 stories in between at least, if not 3, because you're gonna side story 4 is going to be about something different, and then side story 5 is about Nissa. I don't know. We'll find out when we get to that point. But if that's how long you're making people wait, it's just frustrating because there's no way to know what it's from. And if that's their goal, I have gotten very frustrated in the past that a lot of times wizards in their notifications to people seem to be very, well, we're going to tell you soon. I mean, we know, but we're going to tell you soon. And then it seems like they're sitting back and going, it's that's not funny for us. You
right.
Get that, right? We're not in on the joke. You're off on your own laughing about it of oh, they don't know that this doesn't make any sense because Luca's perspective is off and Nissa's actually been captured. And it's is that actually interesting? Because to me, it's just annoying.
And confusing.
Yeah.
Because you're spending most of your time reading this story going, wait a minute, how is my perception of this based on how it's written actually correct? Or do I need to completely change how I'm perceiving it because of who it's being written by?
Yep.
And that shouldn't have to be the case.
No, because again, that's not interesting. That's frustrating.
Right.
It's bad storytelling.
Precisely, yeah. And because there's a way to, if that's what you're trying to convey with the story, there's a way to do that where you're committing to it and you're making the audience understand that.
Yeah.
but they're not committing to it. And I think, like you said, it's a way for them to hide inaccuracies or poor characterization or the yada yada-ing. It's a way for them to, like, pull the wool over the audience's eyes in a more literal sense.
Yep. Because
so, like, we won't point out all of these things that are obviously wrong with the story if on purpose the story is fuzzy because the character is perceiving it as wrong because their memory is fuzzy. You know, like, you're not succeeding at that.
Yeah.
Unless the person reading it is just very surface level involved in reading the stories.
Yep.
And if that's the case, then those problems that you're trying to hide by doing that aren't things that they would have been conscious of or cared about anyway.
Yeah. It's like very frustrating and annoying for sure. I've rambled on long enough. I'm sure people would like to hear more of what you have to say. And I know that this quote was something that you had asked me that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, when Lucas showed up to New Phyrexia and said, New Phyrexia was just another plane. And I'm like... what?
So I took that as foreshadowing / irony of, like, that's what he thought, and then by the end of the story, he had treated it like it was any other plane, and look what happened to him.
Right.
You know?
But they didn't make that a thing. They didn't take that and use it. And all of those moments where Nissa was like, hey, wait a minute, I think you should stop bonding with this creature because it's Phyrexian. And he's like, oh, I can handle it.
Yep.
They didn't, like, take that piece and connect it with that comment enough for you to be like, oh, they're establishing something here. There was no connection. It was just a random smattering, hoping that you would decipher it in the end or miss it and they just didn't care if you missed it. It was really stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, because there was the moment where Luca is bonded with the creature and they're riding the creature up, right? And you start kind of getting the first indications that, excuse me, that this is not a normal bonding that he's going through. Because when Nissa is digging her hips or her knees or her legs into the creature's hips, or ribs, excuse me, Luca is feeling that pain that the creature is going through. And it makes him flash back to a time in his childhood when he was attacked in the ribs. Did you want to talk about this?
No.
Okay. And he kind of, like, is reacting. He's like, I wish you wouldn't do that. I wish you would stop. I wish you would stop. And he, like, gets animated about it. And then his rational mind takes over. And he's like, I understand that she has to do that to be able to stay because we're going vertical at this point. So, you know, she has to be able to survive. So, and it's not my ribs, so I don't have to be upset about it. And yet it triggered him.
Yeah.
He was brought back to that memory and was, like, frantic about it.
Yeah. And there was seemingly no cognizance of what does that mean for me? If I'm now having rib pain because the animal is having rib pain, what does that mean for the state of me at this point?
And again,
none of that existed.
Yeah, we are not up on the Ikoria story, which is unfortunate, right? I would like to be, but we cannot find the time or the interest, to be honest. And if you recommend it, let us know in the comments down below. That would be nice to hear.
For sure.
Because most people, I didn't hear raving reviews about it one way or another. I didn't hear people upset about it, and I didn't hear people loving it, except for the fact that the cards showed Luca in this, like, loving relationship with the beast or whatever that he had bonded with, and yet supposedly, because again I haven't read it, in the book that was not the relationship that he had with this creature at all. So, like, you know, Was it worth it? I don't know. Like I said, you can tell us in the comments down below for sure, because we would love any and all different perspectives from different people. That's always something we're looking for. But
always.
Right. But so I don't know if that's a part of his bonding, where if the creature gets hurt, he feels that pain. You know what I mean? I'm not sure. It could be because it's a Phyrexian, or it could be because that's part of the bonding process, is that you feel its pain.
It was because it was a Phyrexian.
That's a logical thing to think.
And we already knew what was going to happen before we read the story, so of course.
Yeah. But there's the weird moment where like it really happens for real, which is the when they're going up and then this other creature shows up, this other Phyrexian, and Luca and Nissa want to fight this thing, but they have to like stay rooted to this Centaur Hulk thing. So he says to it, well, hold me, like keep me close, let me stay close to you. And the thing like pops out a bunch of tendrils and stabs into his body, and from the inside wraps around his spine. And he just goes, oh, that's not what I meant. But then he's like, oh, it's supposed to hurt, but it doesn't. And then just like kind of goes along with it from then on, right? Like everything else that's happening of like, okay, he removed his little tendrils from me, but now there's these little suckers. And they're like kissing my fingers, popping out of the holes, and like... And I loved the moment where he's like... I
actually liked that part. I was like, oh, that's cute. It's kissing him.
I just liked the part where he was like, he looked to see if Nissa was looking, and then when she wasn't, he like touched it, and it started like kissing his fingers, and then Nissa was like, what's wrong? And he was like, nothing, and like pulled his hand away. Like
he's got like half a cookie behind his back.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
I didn't take one.
Yep. Nothing's happening, don't worry about it, you know? But that moment with the tendrils going into him and that monster coming out and them fighting it, that was where I started getting the inkling that Nissa might not be willingly following him to all these places, and that his brain might be interpreting it differently because she says like, oh, are you sure we're going the right way? And he's like, yeah. You know, and she's like, I don't know that I want to like do this anymore. You know, let's do something different. And he's like, well, can you leave? And she looks down and realizes that like she can't get off this creature because it's the slick trees, which she can't grab onto or, you know, meaningfully stay upon, or a massive drop to the floor below. So she has no choice but to stay. And his response is like, okay, she figured it out. She's realizing that she can't go anywhere. And it's like, is that what it is? Does she realize that she can't go anywhere? Or are you or this creature holding her like King Kong, right? Like, and she just can't leave at that point. And she's trying to figure out how to save you along the way, because otherwise she could just stab you in the neck and leave, you know? But instead she's coming with you. And like, then immediately Nissa's like, yes, let's you and I go fight Vorinclex alone. Like, does that make sense? Because it doesn't seem like it does. And again, that's either bad characterization or Luca's interpretation of the situation is backwards. And he is just, because he is now one with Phyrexia, right, all will be one, he is getting messages from Vorinclex saying, bring her to me, kind of a thing. And so his perception of what's going on is skewed, and he's just bringing Nissa along, but from what we're hearing, since we're only hearing the story from his perspective, Nissa's like, aren't we supposed to be trying to get up so that we can meet the rest of the Planeswalkers? And he's like, oh, I thought we were going to the center, because the center is probably where Vorinclex is going to be. And Nissa's like, all right, let's go fight Vorinclex then. If we can get rid of Vorinclex, that'll help the other Planeswalkers when they're fighting Elish Norn. That doesn't sound like Nissa to me. You know her better than I. But...
She didn't say that. She was the one who said, we're not doing that. That's a bad idea. The Wanderer suggested it.
The Wanderer did, but then Nissa was like, okay, fine, let's go.
Yeah. But that was because she was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm outnumbered, and literally if I go off on my own, I'm going to die. So... Yeah. Or her other choice is she can go with them and still probably die.
Yeah. So again, I guess once we read side stories 4 and 5, we will know definitively whether or not this story was skewed in some way because it was from Luca's perspective, or if it's just bad.
Yeah.
I'm serious. Like, that's absolutely what it is. It's either skewed because they're trying to make it skewed, or it makes no goddamn sense and is purposefully confusing because they can get away with it because Luca's been corrupted.
Right.
Like, I just...
It's dumb.
Yeah. I mean, I said it at the top. I don't really know that there's much to say about it, except there's a lot of disgusting imagery in this story.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of very disgusting imagery. I don't know if there's anything more that I have one last thing to talk about, but I don't know if you have
Go
more
ahead.
to say.
Do you want that to like be at the very end of the episode?
Yeah, is that okay?
So, I mean, yeah, I truly get the sense that this is not a good story. There's a lot of like shock body horror to it that I feel is less of a way of accurately describing things and more of a way of distracting away from the fact that they're trying to pull the wool over your eyes. And that's my opinion, right? It's not very objective. It's just my opinion.
Well, spoilers, that's what we do here, is give our opinions, and as
Yeah.
always, give yours down below for sure. Keep going. Please.
Yeah, I mean, but I'd like to think that we try to be kind of objective about that, or at least to say, like, this would be the other side of that, you know, if we were wrong or something like that. And here, I very strongly believe it is this, but, you know, that is very informed by the fact that these other stories have been the way that they've been, and the fact that they're Phyrexianizing all of the old walkers that they don't know how to write for because they weren't there for that.
And Luca.
Right.
Because reasons.
And because expendable, basically, sadly.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really sad, and I don't know what else to say. I was looking forward to hearing a Nissa story because it might be my last chance to hear any kind of Nissa characterization before she becomes ruined as well, like the rest of them. And she's my favorite planeswalker, but any characterization of her in this story didn't feel correct. And
we were constantly second guessing whether it was even real or not.
Right.
So.
And who knows if it's even gonna really be a thing in the next story that's about her, or if it's just gonna be, she's here, she's Phyrexian, hear her roar.
And because everything was so skewed with what, or possibly skewed, we don't know, but it feels that way, right? But because it feels like everything is so skewed with what we're hearing from Nissa, am I cutting you off? Are you good? Okay. We don't know if Luca is showing any physical changes along the way that she can see.
Right.
Because she would say something. I mean, she mentioned originally, hey, this is a problem, you brought that up. And his response was, if something becomes a problem, I will stop the bonding process. It'll all be fine. And then we're hearing along the way about how he's mentally changing, right? He's noticing all these things and feeling what the creature feels, and when he is among the landscape of Phyrexia, he's going, I didn't never recognize how beautiful it was before.
Yeah.
You know?
They're like describing how gross it is, and
Yeah.
I'm sitting there going,
Yeah.
like trying to choke back the vomit as they're describing it. And then he's like, it's so beautiful. And we're like, ugh, okay.
Yeah. So there's all of that, and yet every time that Nissa, like it specifies, like Nissa turns and looks at him and asks him a question, or casually has a conversation with him, or whatever. So from what we are being told...
Or the Wanderer as well sort
Yes.
of did that too. And
Yeah.
I was like, why are they talking to him like this? Aren't they seeing anything? Aren't they noticing anything of like how he's talking or anything like that? Or like what he happens to be saying. Like, they're really not noticing how Phyrexian he is at this point.
And so, because of that, at the end of the story, we get the art for how Luca looks when he is completed. Here it is. And I put this up here because this is something that I want to talk about. We've had this discussion many times before. You can go back and watch our other JaARs. I'm not going to get super into it, but the story team and the art department don't always talk. It's very obvious. This is the art.
Pretty much never talk.
This is the art that we get. And I just told you, Nissa and the Wanderer, and Amy corroborates as well that I'm not forgetting things either. Nissa and the Wanderer do not react to Luca's physical changes until the end of the story.
Correct.
And so this image that you're seeing here has to be post the end of the story, or at the end of the story.
He wouldn't look that drastically different until after the end of the story, if they were in fact not seeing physical changes that whole time.
Yes. And so, because of that, let's read the words that are used to describe the physical changes he goes through. And you let us know in the comments down below if you think that it was an accurate description of the art that you're looking at or not.
Oh.
You ready?
Ooh, oh no.
Yeah, I brought receipts this time because I'm
You're
annoyed.
in trouble, Lotsie.
I'm super annoyed. All right. So, basically, if you're unaware, Luca bonded with this Phyrexian centaur Hulk thing, and he called it to him to help in his fight against Glissa. Yeah, you're damn right. They put Glissa and Nissa in the same story. You're welcome, I guess.
I hate when they do that.
Just like when they put Kaya and JaAR in the same story together. Just shove them in there, who cares?
Or JaAR and JaAR.
JaAR, JaAR, Kaya, Karn. Anyway. Quote, "The Phyrexian flowed into him. Its tendrils writhed into his body. The rootlets inside him sprung out to meet it. He could feel the Phyrexian move into him and become him. His skin split like it was overripe, more than ready for this change. His body folded outward like a blossoming flower. His ribs opening as the Phyrexian lodged itself inside him. Its arms becoming his arms." That art showed two distinctive figures. And by showed, I mean it's still right here. It shows two distinctive figures. Now, he mentioned along the way that, like, his arms were becoming hard and metallic, and that there were scabs there, and then he would pick the scab, and then underneath it he could see his bone in his arm and stuff.
And the bone was metal.
Yes. But Nissa didn't notice it at any point. He was hiding it well enough, or again, the perspective is so skewed. But that description that I just read is not what we're seeing here. His ribs look quite intact to me. His skin doesn't look cracked open at all. And that creature looks definitely separate, not becoming him.
Well, I was not interpreting that as the beast that he had bonded with, as the Phyrexian that was referred to.
You weren't.
I was not.
What were you envisioning it to be?
Not a particular creature.
Okay, like a principle? Like for the Phyrexians in
like-
general?
Like Phyrexianism. Like Phyrexianation. Like,
It's Phyrexia. It's called Phyrexia.
Yeah.
Okay. But it literally... Okay.
I know, but
The words that are...
thought of it as kind of more of like a personification thing.
No. Sorry, that's not fair. Okay, thank you. I don't buy it, but I appreciate you bringing it up. Right? I don't mean to just be like, nope, shut up, Amy. Like, that's not...
That's just how I interpreted it as you were reading it.
Sure.
Because I already had the context of knowing what he looks like when he's completed.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, okay, so this is much more of like an internal, how he feels kind of thing than it is like how his body exteriorly looks.
I just, like, it describes physical things happening. The rootlets inside him sprung out to meet it. His skin split.
But you never refer to like the emotions that you're feeling in any kind of way physically. If you're like, I don't know an example, but like,
I mean, no, like, my skin crawled. Sure, my skin did not crawl off of my body when I say that phrase. Sure, you're right. But then I say, oh, it made my skin crawl. But I don't say, my skin split like it was overripe, and my body folded outward like a blossoming flower, and my ribs opened up as the Phyrexian lodged itself inside me, its arms becoming my arms. Like, that's just, those are all physical, actual descriptions in a story that is full of disgusting body horror. So again, if that's the case, if you are right, then pick a goddamn lane. And I don't mean you, I mean them. Like, it's the same thing. Like, be consistent. Because you can't describe physical, visceral, disgusting things at one point in the story and then have the end of the story be metaphorical, disgusting things happening. Like, that doesn't make sense to me.
okay.
It just doesn't. And I don't buy explaining it away of like, oh, it's more metaphorical. No, it's not. No way. I don't know. Again, leave it in the comments. Let us know what you thought. What were you in one of these two camps? Did you feel differently in some other capacity? I just
feel like whatever that entity is not necessarily very corporeal to actually take up a lot of space inside of his body, right? So, but he felt like his rib cage moved to make space for it. But that doesn't mean that somebody looking at him is going to be like, ew, your rib cage split apart. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
like I said, I definitely don't buy it. I appreciate the perspective.
Okay.
But I ain't buying it. It's just...
Sure.
But I still want to know what other people think. Like, absolutely. Because maybe I'm wrong. Maybe everybody in the comments is going to be like, yeah, Joe, obviously. And then it's going to be like, oh, okay, sorry, everybody, I guess. But I don't see it. It's.
But I mean, the fact that we have to have that argument, it means that it was poorly written. Because it's not explained enough to actually make us not have to have that debate.
Yep.
You know? And or it's written in complete contrast to what the picture is depicting, so it's wrong. So those are the options, honestly, and both are bad.
Yeah.
So
right.
like having this debate is somewhat irrelevant because either way, it's bad.
And so let's dissect this a little bit. No pun intended, I guess. Nissa and the Wanderer were both afflicted by the trap that was set by the Phyrexians, where they landed in a place that they still didn't mean to land with the other planeswalkers, excuse me. And then they were snapped back as if with a rubber band. Both Nissa and the Wanderer had that happen to them. Now, the Wanderer is very often the one who blips in, blips out. That's her thing. The like shaky aspect is new, which we heard about in a different story, not this one. In this one, she popped in, did a thing, popped out, came back a little bit later, popped in, did a thing, popped out. Nissa, when she got here, again, as long as what we're reading is true, which is so stupid. Why is that what I have to say? It's so
annoying.
stupid. Like, if the story we read is a real story, like, what? What does that mean? Anyway, Nissa didn't have that continue to happen to her. Now, 3 different times in the story, and again, I chalked it up to bad writing, but 3 different times in this story, Luca made reference to Nissa was deciding between doing X and planeswalking away. And then later on, she was deciding whether she had to do X or planeswalk away. Later on, it looked like she was deciding between doing X and planeswalking away. And it's like, you just said the same thing.
No, we get it.
3 times in the same story about different scenarios. It wasn't even like about something that was going to come up. Like later on, she was going to have to decide whether she was going to do the thing or planeswalk away. We're getting up to the time where she's going to have to do the thing or planeswalk away. Okay, now is the time. Is she going to do the thing or planeswalk away? No, it was 3 different situations.
And she never planeswalked away.
Nope. And it was all Luca felt like this is what she looked like she was doing.
Right. It's like, how do you know? That's not even a thing. Yeah, so, I mean, the Wanderer is the one who... you can kind of see something happening when she planeswalks away.
Yeah, they mentioned the white flash or whatever.
But that's because she's not in control of when she's doing it.
Yeah.
But, like, we haven't heard anything, unless I'm wrong, about planeswalkers looking a certain way when they go to planeswalk.
No, we have. We definitely have. That there's like a blue shimmer sometimes if it's a blue walker, or green like energy, like vines when a green walker does. Yeah, we've definitely heard that before.
Really?
Absolutely. They just don't describe it often because you don't see them planeswalking very often. You find them on the plane and that's it. So they don't often describe a different, like, I'm looking at this person as they planeswalk away. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a typical thing that they describe. But yes, you do see
I don't know. I feel like in whatever novels or whatever, where they kept on saying, oh, this person planeswalked away, this person planeswalked away, this person planeswalked away. Like you said, they didn't describe that.
Oh, I mean, they definitely have described it in the past.
Okay, well, maybe it was a while back and I'm not remembering, but...
Okay. Fair enough.
But, I mean, she wasn't doing it, so clearly...
Nissa wasn't.
Correct.
Yeah.
So clearly that wasn't the indication to him that she would do that.
Nope. It doesn't make sense. It apparently is not supposed to make sense. Again.
And if it was the kind of thing where, like, she started to planeswalk away and then couldn't, like, and they just, because it's from his perspective, weren't saying that, there'd be a way for them to actually indicate that to the audience if that was what they were actually trying to convey.
Yeah.
But so it clearly wasn't.
Yeah.
What they were actually trying to convey was she has to make a choice and it could kill her because she's gonna be, Phyrexianized possibly, who knows? And it's like, you suck. You just suck. Like, I hate you.
And so,
So they just got super repetitive in what they were saying.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were like, this is a thing that'll matter 3 stories from now. Promise you'll care then. Sorry. I'm just mad about it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, again, I've been there. Mm-hmm. Johnny's already a Phyrexian. Did you see his art in these cards? Makes me real sad. And it has every time. So, Welcome to the party, Amy. I never wanted you to be here, but now you are.
Yeah.
Anyway, but again, it's all the planeswalkers that we like because we've read the older stories that were written by people who worked for the company full-time, loved the characters, and loved getting to write those characters and let us experience them. And now people who came in and don't understand it and are like, oh, everybody's complaining every time we write about them. What are we going to do about it? I have an idea. So anyway.
I also wanted to point out before we end the episode, I'll wait for you to finish whatever it is you're saying.
Nope.
I picked out my outfits that I was going to wear to, like, look sort of Phyrexian-y, right? And today was a green Phyrexian, which I was unaware we were going to be reading about green planeswalkers today. And
the Hunter Maze specifically, right, which is the green layer of New Phyrexia, for sure.
So when you started reading the story, I was like, I guess I dressed right, which never happens, so...
I disagree. I think you always look lovely.
Thank you.
You're
well,
welcome.
when we did the Elish Norn story, I dressed, Elish Norn-y because I knew that was going to be an Elish Norn story.
Yeah.
But usually I don't know ahead of time. So
it's true.
I just, lucked out on this one.
Yeah. It was kismet.
Yeah.
So, honestly, being able to wear the appropriate outfit to discuss the particular story that we're discussing with the Green Praetor, the Mono Green Nissa Planeswalker, and the Green Red Planeswalker in Luca is a great way for all of you, yeah, that's right, I'm doing it, to join us as we show off our...
Hashtag Vorthos Pride.
That's right, because it's not just about the stories, but it's definitely about the stories.
Real Vorthos know that Nissa's a little bit blue.
It's true. But also black for some reason. Don't worry about it.
No, she's not. Fuck them. They just needed that. They were like, well, we don't have a black planeswalker, so...
For this set. They have plenty of black planeswalkers.
Right.
Just because you don't like Soren doesn't mean you can ignore him.
Oh, I can. I will.
Anyway,
I'll
so
put him in a wall.
we will be like Nahiri.
Stay there.
We will be back this Monday. Hopefully, we do our best to get these things out to you twice a week on time. We've been doing okay so far, knock on wood. But we're hoping to be back this Monday for the next episode, which will be main story number 3.
I feel like he's like looking at me now.
Mm-hmm.
Disapprovingly. On that box behind us.
Which they can't see.
And his eyes are like pointed towards me.
Yeah. So we will be back on Monday with another episode of this. Thank you so much for joining us. We really hope that you enjoyed as always. Please don't forget, as I mentioned before, subscribing and ringing that bell is a great way to make sure that you get notifications whenever any of our videos come out, especially if we are a bit delayed in the next one or whatever the case may be. We hope that you will bear with us, and thank you for doing so. We greatly appreciate it. And yeah, stay tuned to the channel. We've got great things coming up, so we hope that you enjoy. But for now, from us here at the Geek for All family of channels, I've been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.